Be'ez Hashem Parshas Koirach in Eretz Yisrael, Shlach in Chutz La'aretz. Many times we see that people that get tested with a big nisoyan, a big challenge, so even though they have studied concepts of Bitachon and they try to work on themselves, but when push comes to shove, they have a very, very hard time. Sometimes it's to the extent that people fall apart. They feel they have to go for help. And there's always the question, why when I actually had the nisoyan, when it actually happened, why didn't it help? I learned, I thought I got to places, I really invested time and effort to be able to be successful in Bitachon, in becoming a Baal Bitachon. Does it mean that it was all fake? That people have that question, and sometimes it bothers them very deep. It's like a big part of the nisoyan. They're upset at themselves. They feel that they're devastated. They have the actual nisoyan, but they're also devastated how they're handling it. And they're shocked that they thought that they're already standing better. When they looked at the vision, like when they're going to have an nisoyan, people know challenges might come up. They thought they'll be besimcha because they're Baal Bitachon, and then it didn't happen, and they're very tzibrochen. Now, it's a topic that every single person has to try to learn before it comes to you. What can we do about it? Sometimes people say, I guess it was fake. Sometimes people say the exact opposite answer, which is more like a chizik. Listen, it's always harder when it's lemaisa. It doesn't mean that you didn't steig. It doesn't mean you didn't climb the ladder. But when it's lemaisa, you can't try to imagine that you're a malach. You're gonna feel the pain. And if you wouldn't have learned anything about Bitachon, it could have been much worse. And Baruch Hashem, be happy. Which both Yesodis are true. That means a person should be all the way a true Baal Bitachon. We have a long way to go. So the first answer we gave, that it's fake, it's always a little bit true, that it wasn't enough through and through. The person didn't really change themselves till the end, if it's possible, the musik till the end. And Bitachon, it's also true that because it's the actual nisoyan is always much harder. But what's the Torah's plan for that? What was Hashem's system? How would Hashem want a person to feel when they go through a nisoyan? Like, what was it expected? Sometimes you have a student in yeshiva that you say, listen, I didn't expect him to get 100, but I would think he should be getting from 85 and up, and I'm shocked he got a 70. So what's Hashem's plan for us? Hashem knows our challenges, history, desires. Hashem knows all that. And Hashem hands us an nisoyan. And it's hard to believe that Hashem expects us to get 100, because the Sforim explain that it's not exactly, it doesn't work like that. It's back and forth and ups and downs. But what was Hashem expecting us, a 90 and 85? Am I close? Am I far? Could a person know what they were supposed to actually feel when they had an nisoyan? They shouldn't feel like they're falling flat on the face. And it's not only when it's challenges, many times it's shocking, I would call it a station in life, junctions in life. Like in life, a person gets older, not everything is so comfortable. As a person gets older, there's some pretty scary situations that a person has to go through. What's the plan? Does the person have a course in life that could teach them to be all the way fine with it and besimcha? So, the number one Yesod, with the last couple of weeks, we were discussing the topic that a person has to develop kalim. He has to develop the tools inside slowly, so he should be able to actually have the actual feeling of trust, the actual feeling of accepting the Rebbeinu Shalom's plan, the actual feeling of hoping for the best and believing that all that a person has to develop slowly. So the number one answer is that Rebbeinu Shalom has a plan that a person should do exercises in Each and every feeling that a person is supposed to be able to feel when they're going through a crisis, a person has to do exercise. Because if we would say like it's from 1 to 100, how much a person could, let's say, not be scared of a matzav that's coming up. So many different dargas. So we do exercise in level 1, and then when they're not scared, we turn it up, slowly, slowly. So you could have a person that never saw a dog, he sees it from the other side of the street, loses himself totally. So he has to do exercise, he has to get used to it in their head. What does it mean? They get closer, they get to know how how animals act. They slowly get used to it, and it becomes part of their part of their train of thought. They know how this, and when they get used to the concept, then they're not scared anymore. And then we could take the person and we could go a bit further. Then people get trained, they could go into a jungle. Once they get trained more and more and more, we could like go to level 2, level 3, level 4 in a certain specific feeling. Then when we talk about the feelings a person is supposed to develop to be able to be connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom, there's many of it. Not being scared is a certain yesod. Anxiety. A person has to work with themselves. They think, why were you so under pressure? Why were you so scared? What do you think could happen? And you show the person, okay, you think this could happen, and if that happens, and they try it, and they see that nothing happens, slowly, stage fright, all these yisoides, a person has to understand that when they're going to utilize the opportunity that they had to be able to do it on level 1, then they're ready to try the challenge, the next level. So this is the beginning of an answer that Hashem's plan with a person is that throughout the beginning of their life, which continues, you're always in the beginning, but practice in the earliest stages, in relative, you're always building your system of feelings, how to develop the right ones, not to be scared, and to trust, and to learn how to have true hope, how to look positive, how to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom, how to believe that everything was for the good. And you constantly do those exercises. So what happens is the person got muscles, the person became stronger. And then when they got a bigger challenge, it's not from 0 to, they didn't have to jump. It was just one more step. This is sort of one more step. If you look how a person's life usually works, there's always a lot of yotzim and aklal. But if you look how it usually works, as they go on in life, they have to be able to handle bigger challenges. And if you learn how to do it in small, then you know how to do it in big. First, if we would say a smaller budget, and then it grows and grows and grows. And it's everything like that. And all you saw, the nefesh gets built slowly. So this is the first part of the answer. Hashem expects us not to skip the opportunities we had to understand the matzav, understand challenges, and learn from it. So then, when the bigger challenge comes, you're ready. It's a challenge. It's an nisayon, but it's not like you never were able to believe that such a thing could happen. Totally fall apart because you were exposed to it. You weren't exposed to this extent. You were exposed to something that was a drop less. That's the plan of the Rebbeinu Shalom, that a person should always learn. So even if people make mistakes, okay, it's sometimes better in a certain sense. The point wasn't that you should be perfect. The point was, every matzav you go through, think about it.
Even when the person falls apart, that's part of the process.
If a person falls apart, so there's 2 parts. Number 1, it shows that you skipped. It means when a person gets into 7th grade, and that's when they started chapping, he doesn't know what's going on. So they take him to the side and they say, could you read? Could you? And they see blank. The student is blank. So what do we understand? That's called falling apart. Just this is emotionally, this is in the head. We understand, okay, what happened? Oh, there was COVID. He skipped 5th and 6th grade. There was nobody home. So now, when he's not up to there. So when someone falls apart, okay, it doesn't mean the end of the world, b'chalal. All it means is like a simple answer. Oh, he skipped certain stages. You can fix it. You can fix it. It's not too late. It's just like a sign. It's like a red light blinking. When a person's driving a car and there's a red light or different signs that are blinking, it means you're low. Your gas is low. It doesn't mean that that's it. It's a disaster. Finished. Over. I mean, you skipped. You thought you pushed it. You pushed it off. When they, I said, this is the same thing of a person that they knocked over his electricity. What does it mean? That means that he got a bill and he threw it out, and then he got a red one and he pushed it. He shoved it in. It was Motzei Shabbos. He put it in somewhere, and then he ignored the phone calls, and then they shut his electricity. It's not the end of the world. You can fix it. It's a little knas. And you have to, it's like a kind of hassle, but it means you skipped certain steps. You ignored signals. Now, we tend to ignore signals. We do that. It's shtickle painful, the result of it, but that's the human nature. The human nature is to ignore these signals. But when it's painful and you get a slap across your face or you fall flat, something happens, it doesn't mean that Hashem is now punishing you because you're so bad. The experience that a person feels when something like that happens, they fall apart or something, they feel because they're so bad. It means I wasn't ready. I was not ready. I couldn't. I feel I can't handle it. You weren't ready. Hashem says when a person is being matzdik the din, it means a person is accepting. A person is saying, I trust the Rebbeinu Shalom that I should have been ready. But that doesn't mean that it's game over. B'chlal. We go back, and we start seeing which steps we skipped. Today, I think it got out of style. They have the Sudoku still. Sudoku. That if a person is going with the wrong numbers, they could go on, but then it's not going to work in the end. So you go back and you say, I must have made a mistake. So when you go back and you fix it, if a person has the savlon, the patience to do that. But that's number one. So look at it like that. When it's not zero or everything. If you fell apart, it means you could have climbed, and it's important to stress. If this is 100 steps, you could have climbed 70. So you fell apart. So, or it's falling apart is like one word, but sometimes a person that's bekas, they started screaming at people and being upset and trying to do things that they know weren't right. It took them 2 days to calm down and say, okay, it's from the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're missing a certain amount of steps. It's b'chlal not zero. So let's look at it that way. And this is the same concept of building tools, building kelim, developing koiches hanefesh to be able to handle hard, bigger challenges, and to be able to be ready for it. To take this a step further. And this is a very big yesod in the whole topic of Bitachon. The Rishonim, all of them discuss in length that Hashem really takes a person on a journey in their life to be able to develop Bitachon constantly. It's not about because you decided to learn Bitachon, and if you didn't yet, like people that say, I'm not into this, I'm more like into something else. It doesn't work like that. The Rishonim explain. Let's take Klal Yisrael as an example, and then every Yid has it in small. It's minor. The Klal Yisrael had to go through a situation of being in the Midbar, and there's a very interesting shtickle from the Nesivos HaMishpat, Rabbi Yaakov Luberman, the Baal Nesivos. He has a Haggadah Shel Pesach called Ma'aseh Nisim. So by the shtickle in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, where we say that 15 Kama Mailas Teves Lamokom Aleinu Dayenu. So one is the Rebbeinu Shalom Sipek Tzorcheinu Bamidbar Aborim Shana. He took care of all our needs. He gave us mon, took care of the anona, everything that we needed. So he says, but the Rebbeinu Shalom is Meichen Mozen L'Chol B'Rei Yosef. It's not like they just took care of it. even grass, trees, if it's animals, everybody is getting constantly from when the Bria was, from when it was created. Hashem is constantly giving support and food and everything that the Baalei Chaim need. So what is it that we are thanking specifically that Hashem took care of us in the Midbar, and what did He give us food? So He says, we're actually thanking the Rebbeinu Shem put us into that matzav of not having to rely on Hashem, and there was no options, no other way how to get it. And we're thanking that the Rebbeinu Shem made sure we should develop in the Midbar the feeling of bitachon, how to rely and trust only in the Rebbeinu Shem. That is what we're thanking. Hashem took us on a journey, dafka through the Midbar, 40 days. The Gemara says that Hashem is doing that to the person to be able to develop, that they should feel and see that they have nothing to rely on, and that's how slowly they get built. Kriyas Yamsov was like that. Constantly the Rebbeinu Shalom put us through matzovim that should develop by us bitachon. So back to the person, the individual, every individual, the Rebbeinu Shalom at the same time, that's the Nes. At the same time that Hashem is giving them, showering them with abundance, Hashem is also always going to make one piece of the puzzle missing. And that is because, not only because you should rely on the Rebbeinu Shalom. We're used to that. Okay, so that I should have bitachon, so I shouldn't be a balgaiva. That's true, we're used to that. Let's take it a bit further. That's to slowly be able to turn that knob. To be able to develop by the person the feelings of trusting and relying and davening and not being answered and figuring out how to feel. You can't stop, because if you stop and you disregard it, that means you're not busy with that part. You're saying, let me focus. I went to someone, he told me to be optimistic, so I just ignore all those parts of my life. And I thank Hashem. He's in a different WhatsApp group, right? He's in thank you Hashem mode. He's not now in the other kind of life. It's a gefährliche mistake. You could be at two groups at once. That means, of course, you should be thanking Hashem. But if you're just leaving go of it, sometimes people call it bitachon. They say, it'll be good. But you're leaving go of that part of your life in an unhealthy way of not having achrayas. What you're missing is that you're not coming to school. You're playing hooky. That's what you're doing. Now, people do that. Children do. It depends the type of house. The children, they smell it if it's the type of house that they could do that. They just, here was a late Sunday, here it's Motzei Yontif, here we had a chasana, we traveled, and they just skip around. Now, for it could work. A year, 2 years, 3 years, it could work. Problem is afterwards. When you're missing the information and you're not being matzliach to go to the next grade because you never learned, that's a problem. You got to make it up. The good news is we could make it up, but the not such comfortable news to hear is that you might find yourself too early with a challenge that you have no idea how to handle, and you're knocking on doors, and you because you lost everything that you had, all you saw this. So this is the second part of the shir. First part of the shir was to develop the feelings from 1 to 100 slowly. The same feeling you could have it stronger. But number 2 is that the person's life, Hashem will constantly, he's in school from day one. Mamish, from day one. Learn, think, trial and error of what was a richtige feeling, what was right, what was because I wanted, was wishful thinking. If you're not going to do that, you're going to be behind. That's what's painful. There's no point. Hashem never wanted that a person should fall apart when they have Yisurim. They should lose it. They should feel they have nothing. It's chaval. People think that Yisurim, people have to go through the Yisurim, and that there's a word, pain threshold. That means people, how they can handle pain. So people think they have to be able to feel the pain, business off. But if not, it's not Yisurim. If not, Hashem wanted to punish me. So I have to be ready. I should be knocked from all sides. And that's not true. The situation is whatever the situation is. Certain things had to happen, certain signals that He wants to send a person. But Hashem definitely, not maybe, definitely wants you to prepare beforehand and to get used to certain matzavim to slowly prepare the person. They should be ready. Whenever they have to go through it, they have to go through. They should be mamash ready for it. But even more than that, and it's the third part of this answer, and this is the very Yisoidis the Gezach. The Rishonim explain, it's like simple Torah, not the Pesach Sefer says it, that the Torah or mitzvahs, not the matzavim a person goes through in life. Torah or mitzvahs, as a klal, all of it, is all of them have the bitachon factor that if you understand what to think while you're doing the mitzvah, you're going to be training yourself. You're going to be be'emes in a training school of bitachon. There's many leshonis. There's Rabbeinu Yoina, which is based on a pasuk in Mishlei. The Gra says it the strongest, that all Torah mitzvahs is to able to turn the person into Baal Bitachon. That's what Torah mitzvahs is all about. We'll give a lot of examples to be able to chap how it works. It means if a person is doing mitzvahs and they're not thinking why they have to do it, and they're just, now you do this mitzvah, that mitzvah, what happens is that you can find yourself blank. And the person be'emes feels, I'm not into the topic of bitachon, now I'm doing other zachan. But being that bitachon is a very strong dveikus in the Rebbeinu Shalom and a very deep emuna in the Rebbeinu Shalom, which that is the yesoid of Kol HaTorah Kula. This coming week is the more of a Shomash Yortzeit. He brings in a Parshas Yisro from Rabbeinu from the Zensk. The pasuk says in Parshas Yisro, "Vayidaber Elokim es kol hadvorim ha'ele leimor Anochi Hashem Elokecha." The pasuk right before Aseret Hadibros, the few words which most people don't hear because all the cheers are moving because they're getting up for Aseret Hadibros. But what's the Baal Kodesh saying while everybody's making noise with their cheers? So the literal taich is "Vayidaber Elokim es kol hadvorim." Hashem said the following words, the Aseret Hadibros, but the word leimor, usually it's a hard one because even in Lashon Kodesh it's hard to teach it. Is to say. So he says it's Hagdama. Everything that I'm going to tell you, that means all the Taryag mitzvahs, is in order you should be able to feel and experience and be'emes get connected to the mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, which is true deep emunah, true deep connection with the Rebbeinu Shalom for real. The essence of the person feels connected to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So Hashem gives us so many different exercises, but it's not going to do the job if you're not going to think while you're doing the mitzvahs, the concept of it, the mahalach of it, the reason for it, because it's just going to be like a ma'aser koif. You're going to be doing like a monkey is doing it. But if a person is thinking, then it's teaching them. Now, many simple examples which the pasuk says, which the Rishonim say, mitzvah shmita. So many sforim, they elaborate in length. Parashas Bahar, a person, this is his parnosa, this is his income, and Hashem says, the seventh year, nope. You got what's going to happen? Don't worry. That's. Where does it say in the Torah? Don't worry. By Shemitah, it says if you're going to ask how are we going to have what to eat if I didn't have no income, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. Now it could have said it in the Torah, but that wouldn't actually make the person be a Baal Bitachon. Like always, we go and we have our personal challenges, and then you have that person on the side. His job is to say, don't worry. It doesn't do much. It just makes you more aggravated. Shkoyach. You're not going through what I'm going through. So Hashem had a perfect plan. He said, there's something called mitzvahs. Mitzvahs means stop the talking, the thinking, the singing, do it. So a person first time, he's very scared. Very, very scared. He says, but how's this going to work? He says, I have a family. You know what it means, a year? A year is, last Shemitah that we had just half a year ago or a bit more was a Ibiyar. 13 months. And a person doesn't have an income for 1 month, it doesn't, the numbers don't add up. Hashem says, but listen, you gotta be a Yid. Back and forth, and then he says, okay, I'm jumping in. Now, afterwards, they became a new person. It's not about only the mitzvah they were Mekayim. They became a new person because they had to go through hardships. It's not about, and then they had a ness. The day after Rosh Hashanah, someone said, you kept Shemitah, $1 billion. That's not what happened, B'chlal. Not in the middle, not before, not after. What happened was that they had to go through the hard way. They had some savings, which they promised themselves they're not going to touch, and they did touch it. That was in the beginning. And then it became hard, and then they called for, and they said to them, and then someone, they had a little help, and they had a lot of help. But they really developed a new feeling now. Shemitah, the earth, was actually a tool for where the Shemitah really happened. Where did it happen? It happened by the person. Most of us don't actually have this nisayon of Shemitah because we don't own karka. It's not our income. So there's many different yisoyos. We can't skip. There's no way. You have to do many of them. Take the concept, which is a little bit connected with Shemitah. There's a mitzvah, im kesef talvu es ami. If you have money, if you have the ability, someone needs to lend money, give him. He says he's going to try to give it back to you in 2 months, a few $1,000s. You see the guy, you're like, you sure? How are you going to pay it back? He says, nah, I have an income that's coming. It's not easy. It's not easy. But the Rebbe Shem said that don't worry. Do it. And sometimes the end of the story is, I think I'm not going to finish the story. He didn't give back the money. And the guy's like, I burnt myself. I'm never doing this again. Never. And the next couple of people that try him, did they get it? But if he's a Baal Bitachon, that means he's figuring out the 1 second, why does Hashem tell me to do that? And then he tries to figure out if he maybe got an income, if maybe try to think Hashem didn't take care of you, He didn't give you back the money. But maybe you got that amount of money or doim from a different place. People feel anything that comes in is like a given. That's for sure. No, maybe it was instead. Think you have to do that, because if you don't do that, you're doing it, you're working on yourself, and you're never chapping. I know a story of someone which some of the people know. It was Meir Pilchik, Zechron Levrocha. He once had such a story. Someone came to ask him back for money that he borrowed, not for himself. He was busy doing mitzvahs and tzedakahs and Moses. And someone came to him and told him, you have to pay back. He said, you didn't get back the money? He says, what do you mean? He says, tell me the truth. In the last few weeks, did you get out of nowhere this amount of money? The guy said, let me look. He checked. He said, you know something? He would never put the one-on-one to Gemar Kesher. He got from a grant from a bank from a chvezer years ago. He got it. He says, okay, that's the end of the story. If what he did about paying his choif, but he was so sure. His emunah was so strong. Wow, he was so sure. What do you mean? You did a mitzvah. You really think Hashem let you go? Look on your bank account. Look, you'll see. Now, people could go through life from the beginning to end, and they'll never look. Such a chaval. Why didn't you look?
It happened to me this week.
This week.
There was a loan. Somebody, it became clear he wasn't going to be able to pay it back. And out of the blue, somebody wrote to me that they wanted to a bit more than that.
A bit more than the loan.
I didn't put it together.
It's fascinating. But it happens to everybody. It happens to everybody because Hashem gave you to do a mitzvah. There is a sikun, there's a risk. If you give a loan to someone, there's a risk. If it wouldn't be such a mitzvah. Now, a person be'emes is uncomfortable. A person be'emes should see you have to be able to afford that loss. If not, you could get all messed up. But nobody wants to lose any type of any amount of money. But you trusted the Rebbeinu Shalom, not him. When he said he's going to pay you back, the real reason why you gave a person a loan, a person has to be able to do exercise. The real reason is because I trusted the Rebbeinu Shalom. He said I should do it. It's mistamer, right? Slowly a person develops, I'm not going to lose on doing the right thing. So that's another, it's another example. But the Yiddish way of life is even a bigger example. Having children, like what's the plan? Even if a person has one child, anything, a person doesn't enter life as in figuring it out. He's trying to see right now what's the right thing to do. What's the right thing to do for me right now? But it could bring me problems when a person is young, and it's good because if a person would be much more miyoshev, nobody would do it. Because they're like, but a person is young and they still say, oh, they're still like in a dreamland. So Hashem got them in before they were thinking. But the emes hamalach is that a person is saying, right now, Yishuv Adas, what's the right thing to do? And it's developing slowly by a person trusting and believing, and the davening, the whole yesod of tefillah develops bitachon by a person. And then we have part 2, which we have a mitzvah, the Raisa, the Rebbeinu Yoiner, the Charedim, they count it as an actual mitzvah. A person should look back, see interesting zachen that happened, because you're slowly going to be developing. You say, listen, you know how many times I davened, and in the end, I saw Hashem heard my tefillas. Maybe not exactly what I was thinking, because my mind is limited. I can't know the plan, but in the end, every single time, I understood that Hashem listened. That's really the Nakuda. If I really davened, I felt, I saw the light that Hashem is listening and answered me. Not always the answer is exactly how the person started off. But anyways, when a person is going to do mitzvahs and Torah and tefillah with constantly trying to climb that ladder, the person is building kalim. That's how the person is building kalim. And that's the third part of the answer. When a person feels they fell apart, take it as a tool for Vaita. It's not the end of life. It's as a tool. Maybe I should try whatever I'm doing, not new things. The things that I'm doing anyways, the mitzvahs, the davening. Maybe let's try to put more machshava to it, that it should be a stepping stool. It should be a board, to be able to, all of them. Building like jumping, all of them. Go! Get up on it. Not back and forth. A person is atut, and then his state is saying the same. You can't. Let's say it a little bit in a more amamishprach, down to earth. You see people at the age of I don't want to mend. You can fill in the blank, and they're childish. They stay the same. It's like it hurts. The way of thinking, reacting, getting. Sometimes they get hurt. Come on. You know, nobody bems wanted to hurt you, and there's other weiter. Sometimes they're not at fault. Not everybody was giving the same, IQ, not only IQ, whatever it is. There's a lot of, we're not judging people. But they didn't develop, they didn't go weiter to develop deeper feelings, which is negea for life. Social skills that a person has is supposed to be constantly refined. Because it's not something that's just to be able to enjoy life. It's something that a person could be able to be more thoughtful, and a person could be able to feel with people whenever there's a lot of details, such details. The feelings of a person don't have an end. So if a person is not going to get up in the morning and say, today I'm going to up. I'm doing it anyways, but I'm going to put machshava to the meisim that I'm doing, that it should build me as a person that has much more kelim for bitachon. Then they could go months and years, and they did so many mitzvahs, but they stayed a child in the inner ma'areches, from into the system of inside. It didn't really develop that a person should become deep. And if you look at people that don't work on themselves, and they're busy, they're invested in being able to make a lot of money, they're invested in being able to fame or whatever it is. Many times what happens is that it's the exact opposite. That means not only they didn't continue, they started going backwards because they got so invested in the goal where they want to head to. So what happens is that they started trying to persuade people to be able to get fame or whatever, and then they became bigger or smaller children. I mean, it's more immaturity. Sometimes a person could deteriorate when it comes to these mahalchim, because it depends the sweep of the person and what a person is in. So, just to finish off, the previous shir which we spoke about, what sheker could do to a person. If a person is busy living a life of sheker, trying to constantly show and look at successes as in how do people look at me, and they don't invest in building the inner yesodis, what happens is not only they don't go up, they could be'emes become more babyish in the Torah perspective, in the bitachon perspective. That means when they had challenges, they were much more humble, and now they started feeling that they have to have a different type of life, and people have to talk to them a certain way. So it's a bechira of the person which direction they're taking, and to constantly put machshava to all Torah mitzvahs and experiences that they're going through, that they shouldn't skip all these steps, because if you skip, it's not going to be pleasant. With tefillah and with tshuva, a person could constantly build themselves, even and especially with the mistakes that they made. Okay.
Sometimes the person didn't pay attention in high school, so he doesn't have to go back to 7th grade. In 1 year, sometimes he can do a course making up the things.